Yo, what is going on YouTube? Welcome to my channel, and if you don't know who I am, my name is Zach, and in today's video I am going to be going over the Philosopher's Iceberg that I found on Google. It brought me to the Reddit iceberg charts. I'll link them down below if you guys want to see the subreddit, but this particular post is about the various philosophers throughout time. 90% of them I haven't heard of, honestly. And since this is a new channel and nobody knows who I am, I just wanted to kind of give you guys like a brief introduction of who I am and pretty much why I want to do this. So first and foremost, my name is Zach and I'm really into philosophy. I didn't go to school for this, but I do remember ever since I was young, I've always been into things like psychology and sociology, so much so that when I was like 9 or 10, I told my mom like I was gonna go to college for psychology. Never did, but this has clearly been something that I've always been interested in, just this realm in general. And really for the past year, I've gotten deeper into different philosophies, but more specifically, I got really deep into Stoicism from last year to now. And it really changed my life. It came into my life at the right time. I was going through a lot, and that can be another story in itself. But on this iceberg, my goal really is to just be able to understand some of these fundamental philosophers, get deeper into some of the more theoretical, maybe even outlandish ones, and even just be able to understand more, honestly. Like, that's really just my goal. So if you don't know what an iceberg is, at the end of the day, the top is the most understandable stuff, very surface level, very easy to find everywhere. And then the deeper that you go is the more theoretical things that honestly you need to have. I believe you need to have some foundation for, so you understand like the angle and perspective that they're coming from. But also just for you to be able to follow along, because I'm very sure that a lot of these deeper ones are built on some of these other philosophers that came out. So there's 8 tiers on this one. At the very top in tier 1, we have people like Plato, Socrates, Marx, Camus, and Sartre. And those are the people that I'm going to be covering in this video today. And in the preceding videos after, I'm gonna go over tier 2, tier 3, all the way down to tier 8. And also, before I begin, I know we're about 3 minutes into the recording now, just wanna let you guys know that in between these iceberg videos, I do plan on diving deeper into each of their works to understand them more for my own sake, but also to share with you all what I've learned. So after this video, I'm gonna do a video on Socrates, Plato, Marx, Camus, and Sartre, and then just keep doing that. So I'm gonna be learning a lot about these people's philosophies, even though I have an idea of who these people are just by my research that I've done now. I definitely want to read their work and create my own opinion on it and formulate my own ideas on what they have, just to see if I can kind of navigate myself into any of these other people in general, you know? And I've also learned just through some of this general research already that a lot of philosophers are asking a question that all of their work is attempting to answer. And then another philosopher later on, or maybe even decades later, centuries later, honestly, will respond to their question with their own opinion, or, you know, rebut it essentially. And I find that pretty interesting. So what I do plan on doing, I kind of formatted my research in that kind of way. I'm going to give you guys a brief explanation, background, what they're known for, but then also give you their philosophical question that I found, and then dive deeper into their work. So hopefully you guys are interested in it. I know I've been holding you guys up for a little while, so let's just hop right into it. We're 4 minutes in, so shout out to you. But the first person that I started with in my research is actually Socrates. I didn't start with Plato because Socrates was Plato's teacher, and that's what I found throughout my own research. And he's pretty much the granddaddy of Western philosophy pretty much started the entire thought process after, and then Plato, and then Aristotle, and then everybody after them really spawned from Socrates and his teachings. They say he was born 469 or 470 BCE. Hard to know when there aren't any records, and he also wasn't really the type of person to write anything down. So kind of like Jay-Z, he just freestyled everything off of his head, and that's why I think he's pretty much the GOAT, in my opinion. But he had his own things going on, like he didn't like to clean up after himself. Like he was pretty dingy as a guy. They said his nose was pretty snub, so he had like a pig looking appearance, and he probably didn't smell that great either because he didn't come from money. And back then, if you didn't have money, you really didn't have great hygiene or access to the greatest healthcare either. But that's not what killed him, and I'm gonna explain how he died. But he was pretty much accused for corrupting the youth of Athens, and he was sentenced to death, but it was self-suicide. He was given this drink called hemlock, and it killed him. But the reason why, as far as I'm concerned, is because the philosophical question that he was trying to answer is, what is the relationship between religion and morality? And for him, education was a very important thing. And for his students, like I believe his name was Xenophon and Plato, he would talk about how he didn't believe in democracy. And the reason being for that like whole argument is just because he doesn't believe that just anybody should be voting on subject matter that they're not educated on. And why that's so insightful and why I still believe that that insight was ahead of its time is because I believe that's the case to this day, even so much so that he was called ugly for his snub nose and everything. The people of Athens, Greece at the time put so much emphasis on beauty. Not much has changed here in the Western world either, in the United States. But just being educated in politics is a really important thing for him. And he would tell his students that. He would also argue with his students and explain to his students about his stance on gods. At the time, they were a polytheistic society, and he believed that something else, honestly, and I haven't really figured out what. Maybe I glazed over it, but that relationship between morality and religion, Plato wrote in a book called Euthyphro, and it presented the Euthyphro dilemma. And what it is basically the argument of where good comes from, like where the value of good comes from, and aka morality. Does it come from God, or is good because good is good? And the first option is basically God recognizes what's good, but he didn't determine it. Like what is good is just good. And then the second option is what is good because God commands it. So that's called the divine command theory. And both options have their own pros and cons as far as I'm aware and as far as I've learned. And essentially, with that first option of what's good is good because it's just good, it separates goodness from divinity. And the problem with that is then if God didn't assign what is good that value, is he really all powerful? Is he omnipotent? And that really would rub a lot of people the wrong way. But also, if something is good just because God commands it, which is the second option, how can we say what is good is really moral, to separate those words a little bit? Because it could be random in a sense. One of the examples that I came across that made sense, and it sounds really extreme, but just to make it make sense, say one day randomly God appears to you out of thin air and he speaks to you, and you really believe this is God, and then God tells you that you need to go out and kill all kittens, young kittens. if you are a person who is following the Bible and following God, just because he commands what's good is good and what's bad is bad, you're going to go out and kill these kittens. But if you aren't following that and you believe that is morally wrong to just go and give unnecessarily trauma and harm to a kitten, you won't do that. But then you're not following what God is telling you to do, because just because you believe that's morally wrong, but God believes that's morally good. And that's the entire dilemma, and that question is still being answered to this day as far as I'm concerned. There's a third option that was presented, but that doesn't necessarily, like, after I've looked into it, it kind of just broke down into these two categories. But even like a more common one would be, for example, tattoos, right? Tattoos are actually not allowed in the Bible. Women aren't allowed to braid their hair in the Bible. Homosexuality is banned. It's forbade in the Bible. But is it morally wrong? No, not necessarily, right? And if you're just following the Bible through the divine command theory, in my own opinion, and this is my opinion on it, this isn't Socrates' opinion on it, but my own opinion is, I can see how like cults become a thing, how people can be misled and manipulated to believe something to be good because they would say God commands it. That you could twist words, you can reinterpret certain passages and make somebody really believe something is morally good, even though it may not be. And that can cause inner turmoil. But if you are a very impressionable mind, or if you're in an impressionable stage of your life, I can see how people become indoctrinated and convinced to join cults or just anything in general. I'm not saying all of those are bad or anything like that, but I can see how it happens because of something like that, especially if you are very, very deeply rooted in your religion, or you grow to be deeply rooted in your religion. So that's Socrates. Before he committed suicide, I guess is the best way to say it, Plato wrote out one of his discourses called Apologia, or the Apology. And that's one of the books that I do plan on reading after, we finish this one up. Just so I can dive deeper into who Socrates was as a person, because again, he didn't write anything down. Everything has been written secondhand and third accounts, translated from Latin or Greek, I guess, to English and stuff like that. So I definitely plan on diving into that, and also reading Youthfro. It's a very short text. I seen it on an MIT site. So I plan on reading that as well, just to kind of have my own opinion on it, and not just what, I found through, YouTube and other people's pretty much paraphrasing on it on the internet, like reading through like articles and stuff. So yeah. Now we have a student, Plato. He's most known for the Republic. He was born 428 BCE, and he's known for a lot of things. He in himself, before I get to that, the theory of forms is what I would say he's probably most known for. He wrote a lot, and his main goal was to figure out how to get people to eudaimonia, or fulfillment, as he called it. So Plato wrote, the Republic. He's also known for his allegories, like the allegory of the cave. And he also created the Academy, which was pretty much like the equivalent version of the modern day university, except like anybody could go for free. Not so much the case now. And he also presented the idea of a true philosopher king, like either philosophers will become kings or kings will have to become a philosopher. And I know he influenced the minds of people like Marcus Aurelius, who was the last great Roman emperor of the time, who I believe studied underneath him or Aristotle. Don't quote me, but I know Marcus Aurelius was that philosopher king that Plato always wanted or believed in, right? So basically, Plato's question was, how can people reach fulfillment? And he had 4 different ways for people to be able to do that I've found, at least. The first one is thinking more. And this very first one, like as soon as I learned about it, I was like, yep, I agree. Just because of the fact that that's what happened for me. You know, it could just be because of the type of person that I am, but just allowing me personally to have more time to think freely and journal specifically, like that's really helped me a lot. I mean, you guys can't see it, but inside my bookcase, I have a stack of journals like this tall, of all sizes, like, you know, regular notebook size to like little pocket journals that I would keep on me. Just full of notes. I have a lot of notes on my notes app. And just be able to think more, think clearly has personally helped me a lot. I'm gonna sip my tea real quick. You guys are wondering what I'm drinking. It's just classic green tea, yogi tea, and some lemon and honey. On here, it says, without the storms and rain, life would cease to be. Gotta love it. We could even talk about this. But anyways, thinking more is the first way that Plato said that people can reach more fulfillment. I don't disagree with that at all. The next one was let your lover change you. And I found this one pretty interesting because initially I was like, whoa, no, like you shouldn't be with somebody if they're going to change you. Like you should be with somebody because they love you for who you are in that moment, like as you are, as is. But I stand corrected, because what Plato really means is you want to be with somebody who pushes you to become a better version of yourself, but also they have qualities that you don't necessarily have or aren't the strongest in that you can now take from them. You know, like if somebody is a better communicator than you, but you're better at discipline than them, they can help you be a better person in discipline, but you can also learn how to communicate from them. And then, you know, hopefully vice versa, they learn to become more disciplined from you, but they become a better communicator because of you. And that's what Plato meant by a second thing of let your lover change you. And the third one is decode the message of beauty. And what this essentially means is, for example, paintings. I have this painting on the wall right here, and art, music, just all these different creative outlets. It basically educates your soul about what's really important. For example, like if you see a painting or a picture and there's a bridge that might be communicating to your soul why it's so attractive to you, strength, you know. Or you might see, for example, for me, I love flowers. And for me, what that means is like fragility, softness, natural beauty. You know, that's something that I hold near and dear to my heart, but I love flowers. I have flowers all over me. I have plants here. I have this painting here that's literally flowers. So that's pretty much what it is. Like, look deeper into what art is, the beauty of it, and also even the ugliness of it. That's what he means by the third thing of decode the beauty, the message of beauty. And then the last thing is reform society. And this is what I meant earlier about the whole philosopher king, because Plato, like Socrates, believed in an educated society, and his whole thing was really how to make philosophers become kings, or how to turn kings into more philosophy thinking or philosophers. And something else I want to get into, I just noticed this on my notes too. We're talking about politics with Socrates because he had a lot of problems with politics. You know, he didn't believe in their gods and all of that. But Plato had this quote that said, one of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. And that is really interesting to me because of the fact that I was just talking to my girlfriend earlier that why, as we get older, does politics become more of an important thing to us? And obviously, when you're younger, at least it doesn't seem like it's not affecting you, but a lot of the things that are being voted on are affecting you as a child. Something simple like, school uniforms, right? So knowing about that, knowing what politician is pro school uniform and not, and who's against it. But then as we get older, my thought, I feel like it's pretty straightforward, is just because we are contributing to the society in that sense of, if we're voting on a subject matter and this person has a platform on that, like sustainable energy, renewable energy or something like that, and they have a platform on that, but then on top of that, they have a bunch of heinous stuff that we don't believe in, but we're only looking at that one thing. Are we going to really vote for this person? Maybe, maybe not. Or maybe the next person has a platform on, economics, but then they have a little bit on sustainability. Are we going to vote for them because they have something that is more in line with us? Maybe so. We don't know, but you have to be educated on it. Otherwise, really, you're kind of just voting just to vote. And that one is a no-go. But I did mention theory of forms for Plato, and basically his entire thought process is about what the ideal world is. But he didn't use ideal, he used the form. So what is the form of friendship? What is the form of a romantic relationship? What is the form of a business, right? What is the form of school? And for him, these two worlds of what the most ideal world is and what the always changing real world is what helps us get to that next level. So like if we have an ideal version of what of a romantic relationship is supposed to be like, we're going to constantly be trying to get to that. And that's the world that we live in now. It's the constantly ever evolving world. But the ideal world is what's there. It's solid. It's not changing. And through my own research, I found that, scholars have taken on the theory of forms and broken up into three worlds now. So you have the material objects, mental images, and theoretical forms, which is the world that Plato was talking about. So material objects is literally like this world here. But the second world is mental images, so what we envision as. And I feel like that one is kind of like that blurred line in between where it's not changing to the third world, which is changing, or which is not changing. So it goes from basically constantly evolving to like getting toward the not changing third world. So that second world of mental images, for when I was younger, the most ideal version of a romantic relationship is very different than what I envision it as to be now, but it always has been based on stability, for example, security, comfortability. But what those things were, how I envisioned it, was a lot of different things. It was money, cars, clothes, stuff like that. But nowadays, it's a little bit different. So that's Plato. And we're going to hop into these last three guys. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this. I've really enjoyed going through a lot of this. I'm not even gonna lie. It's been super duper fun. But we're gonna hop into this next person, and that's Karl Marx. He was born 1818 in modern day Germany, I believe, Prussia, Germany. And his family was actually Jewish, but he was born as a Lutheran, and that was, as far as I'm concerned, because of the Semitism toward Jews. I mean, Germany, Jews, they didn't really mix well, and we've seen that happen basically 100 years after he was born in the war, World War II. So Karl Marx, known for the Communist Manifesto, he's said to be the father of socialism, and he also wrote Das Kapital, or Capital. And it's a little background on him. He studied law and philosophy at the University of Berlin under G.W.F. Hegel, and that's where he joined his first gang, basically, called the Young Hegelians. And basically, like, their entire platform was to challenge all existing institutions and all ideas on everything. You know, like, they were basically those people that would say no to everything and ask you to explain why for everything. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but that's essentially what they did. And later on in his life, when he met his business partner, Friedrich Engels, in London, that's where he joined the Communist League, and that's when they ended up writing the Communist Manifesto in 1847. But Marx's philosophical question that he was trying to answer his entire life is, what does it mean to be free? And for him, everything was, like, his foundation of everything was based on labor. So, he wrote about different modes of production. So we had primitive communism, feudalism, and capitalism. So primitive communism was way back in the day through hunter-gatherers time. At that time, socially, we were all very equal, but labor-wise, we were all working very hard. Feudalism was pretty much the opposite of that, where we first started seeing surpluses, where there was a peasant class that was working really, really hard for very minimal stuff, and then anything extra went to the upper class, where they weren't working at all most of the time, but they got to enjoy all the fruits of the labor. So those two different modes of production were called forces of production and relations of production. And forces of production is the technical, scientific, and material parts of the economy. So, like, literally, like, the workforce, or the tools, the oil, the resources, stuff like that. And then relations of production were how people organize themselves around labor. So what I wrote here is, like, do people work for wages or produce and sell their own goods themselves? How does ownership work? Is trade an essential part of the economy? So these are things that are all within the relations of production. And for Marx, he broke down just how he's seen everything with two different classes. You had the working class, and then you had the capitalists. So the working class he called the proletariat, and then the capitalists he called the bourgeoisie, or I believe that word is the root word for, like, our word called bougie. So the bourgeoisie. And basically why Marx had such an influence on more modern, 20th century philosophers and imperialists and rulers and tyrants, I guess, is because of his deeply rooted, I guess, hatred toward capitalism. Literally at that time, and even nowadays, we produce more than we could ever buy as a society. If everybody were to buy everything, we still would have too much. And that was a street sweeper. For Marx, that's the problem in itself. Like, the problem that we have is a surplus of goods and even money now. We have so much that the people at the top are always going to get first bid, and then the people at the bottom are barely struggling to survive in so many cases. He felt like the proletariat, or the working class, was getting exploited, taken advantage of. And that's because the only thing that the peasant or the working class or the proletariat has to offer is labor, And if that's all you have to offer, somebody can take advantage of that. I don't disagree with that. I 100% agree with that. through wage, right? How much they're willing to pay you. In the United States right now, currently, the minimum wage is $7.25. It's been like that for a while now, and even so much so that the price of living, the cost of living has gone up, but the wage has stayed the same. I believe, don't quote me, I haven't looked too much into it economic wise, but even if you live on, even if you're getting paid $15, $17, $19 an hour, you can still barely afford to live. And I mean, if you are really good with pinching your pennies, you're not having any entertainment, like you're at the absolute bare minimum of living, you might be able to scrape by with maybe $19 an hour. I know that to be the case because I've done it, very, very, very hard to do. And mind you, I live in a county where it's expensive, so one, the benefit of that is I can get access to a higher minimum wage, but the problem is the cost of living is so high, like if I was making that same money and I'm living somewhere in the Midwest or even in the South a little bit, I would be okay, but you wouldn't get that higher wage. At the end, there's a trade-off. At the end of the day, there's that clash. And for Marx, when the force and the relation of productions meet, that's at a conflict. And what that conflict results in is revolution, and we've seen that happen with China, we've seen that happen with Germany, we've seen that happen with North Korea, right? His ideologies really influenced a lot of those countries. I don't really need to go too deep into that. We'll go into that when I do a solo video on him. But he really did come across as a really interesting person to me, mainly just because of the fact that I didn't know too much about his own ideology or his life. And then also, kind of feel like you got to give this guy some pity in a way. Not that he needs it or if he cares for it, but it's just kind of funny how he's always arguing about capitalists when his own partner, Engels, was a capitalist that funded him, a communist or a socialist, whatever you want to call him. So I found that pretty interesting. I don't know if he was so blinded by it or maybe Engels was just so repulsed by it. I don't know, but at the end of the day, Engels was still literally supporting him. Like his financial support was Engels. And I don't know, I had a conversation with some friends a little while back, and finances is a pretty big topic as we get older, and I feel like just having some money in your pocket, 5, 10K in your bank account, just chilling, really changes your perspective on a lot of things. It changes how you act, how you move, and I can only imagine having more money, for me, in my opinion, would make me a lot more patient with things because I can literally afford to see something develop in front of my eyes compared to when I have been in very, very, very financially insecure situations, still with bills and stuff to pay for, but didn't have the income to make it happen. And literally expecting things to happen immediately. Very, very, very impatient with everything because I needed everything mattered. Every penny, everything matters. Everything still matters, but even more so then. So I feel like if Marx had some money in his pocket, maybe if he was a little bit more of a successful journalist or writer, he might have a little bit of a different perspective. But I don't know. This is literally all speculation. He could just be gung-ho on fuck capitalism. You know what I mean? I don't know. But the next person that we have is Albert Camus. He's known for The Outsider and also The Myth of Sisyphus. It was an essay that he wrote about absurdism, I believe it's called, but like his philosophy is on the absurd. And the philosophical question that he wanted to answer throughout all of his work is a hopeless life without meaning that transcended unnecessarily wrong. So he wrote The Plague. He's known for absurdism, but Camus was riddled with tuberculosis. And just to kind of give you some context about him too, he came off the heels of God is Dead from Friedrich Nietzsche. Because before that, a lot of people, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as my research has shown me, again, I'm still learning a lot of this stuff. So if I'm wrong with a lot of this, just let me know. But Albert Camus coming after that sent a lot of people's minds spiraling because of the fact that everybody before then thought that there is something in the afterlife to attain. And then being told that there isn't anything to live for after that, especially back then, I feel like stunned a lot of people, almost existential crisis. And we'll get into that soon too. But it sent a lot of people into these existential crises where now they're having to question, if there isn't anything after this life, then does that make my life even worth anything or worth living? Camus said, honestly, life is a futile effort because it all leads to death anyways. That's still a fact. Like, there's no need, we'll be careful with this, but like being so optimistic about something that you don't necessarily know if it's true or not is a futile effort. And what I mean by that is we all know we're gonna die. That's just a fact. You know, Ben Franklin said, there's only two things guaranteed in life, and that's death. That's death and taxes, at least in the United States. Other countries, maybe not so. But Camus said that there's two ways for us to basically live an absurd life. And he would call them different suicides. So you had the physical and the philosophical suicide. The physical suicide is literally realizing life is absurd, life is futile, so why live it? And then just kill yourself. That's the suicide that we know. The philosophical suicide is realizing that life is absurd, but then using that to escape into something else, aka religion. Because that escape makes you feel like there's something in the afterlife. So you basically make an agreement. You basically make an agreement with yourself that there's nothing, you recognize there's nothing worth living, life is absurd, but you choose to then pick a religion that says otherwise type. And basically, I'm reading my notes here. I was saying how it states that we're rational and highly ambitious people that want to give meaning to an irrational street sweeper again. We want to give meaning to an irrational and indifferent universe when really the reality is this is all there is, you know? And if there isn't anything that transcends life, how can we focus on creating a life that is meaningful, that we choose to live by? And Camus, for example, he's known as like the most handsome philosopher or whatever, but like he would put value, he would assign his own value onto things that he felt were important. So, I mean, again, I'm using this word, but again, I don't know it too much, so I could be using it wrong, but determinism, for whatever reason, keeps popping up in my head. But basically, he decided what is valuable in his life. He decided that swimming was important. He decided that women were important. He decided that art and whatever else was important. So that's what made his life worth it. And that's where the myth of Sisyphus comes in, because Sisyphus is a fictional character from Greek mythology or whatever, that his punishment for eternity was to roll a boulder up a hill, but at the end of the day, the boulder would roll down. And Sisyphus knew that was his punishment every day for eternity. He was going to have to roll this boulder up and it was going to fall down. He was going to have to do it the next day. But we have to imagine Sisyphus as happy, as fulfilled. Like, he is proud that this is his duty every day. he's assigning meaning to it, even though he knows that is his punishment. You know, like our punishment in life is death at the end of the day. So the futile effort is to fight the fact that we're going to die. And instead of committing physical or philosophical suicide, we assign value to things that we find important, and that makes our life meaningful because of it. You know, it shouldn't make you depressed or anything. And that's the whole thing with Camus. It sounds really dark and morbid, but I feel like, again, this is laying a foundation for things that are going to come. And then the last person we have is J.P. Sartre. He was French born, just like Albert Camus. I believe Camus was actually from Algiers, but again, whatever. And he's known for nausea and also writing Being and Nothingness. So Sartre is also known to be the leader, or he led the philosophy of existentialism, and famously he denied a Nobel Peace Prize in literature because he said that he didn't want to attach himself to an institution. So that's what we're starting with. He also says, as some background on him, human consciousness is an opposition of being. And he also had a lifetime partner, Simone de Beauvoir. They never got married, but she was also a philosopher and a feminist. He was super interested in Marxism, but I remember reading somewhere Marx actually, if I'm not mistaken, Marx came for Sartre one time, and Camus kind of disowned Sartre at one point. But basically, the philosophical question for Sartre was existence precedes essence. And it's not really a question, it's more of a statement. But what that means is similar to Camus. And then remember, these guys are coming after the God is dead statement. How to find life how to find meaning in life if our life is supposedly meaningless, if we're all going to die anyways. And for Sartre, it was more so the fact that instead of us being made in the image of some divine entity that has this essence of good and we're supposed to live by that essence, we actually create that essence after we are born. So for example, when I'm typing, I type, I am happy. The M already had an essence before I even typed it down because I already knew what this letter was going to be before I wrote it down, right? What Sartre is saying is, as people, we create the essence as we live on. So every decision that we make is going to basically create that essence for us. So some days we're living on the good path, some days we're living on the bad path, some days we're living on the good path. And through every decision that we make throughout an entire life, that creates our essence. So some of us may be leaning more toward good, some of us may be leaning more toward bad, some of us may be very neutral, some of us may be really good, like none, some of us may be really bad, like serial killers, morally, I guess. But we create that essence after we live. So we exist before we live. And for him, that's what frees ourselves from the shackles of human nature, as he called it. So he has this thing called bad faith. I plan on diving deeper into this when I go into his solo video too, but bad faith is when an individual is unaware of their own individual freedom and restricts themselves from a certain role. So basically you prescribe to a preordained world. So because we believe that people are good, we live by what other people choose is good and moral. But Sartre believes that we have to make our own template for our own existence that embraces who we are as people. And that's what creates our own essence. So what I find to be good and morally right, somebody may not find, like me sitting here talking on camera to you guys may be wrong for somebody else who believes that I need to be up and working, using my hands and hammering things, whatever the case is. So we have to create our own template. And I mean, I can see how this is going to be another platform for some of the other people preceding him, or to add on top of him, I guess. But yeah, that's tier 1, guys. I know this video is pretty long, 45 minutes. I don't know if all of them are gonna be this long, but hopefully if you enjoyed it, let me know. If there's anything that I missed from talking about these people, also let me know. I have notes on a lot of stuff, and I feel like I got most of them. But like I said, I'm going to be diving into their works individually as time goes on. So if you guys want to see that, you can just click the card or the little video at the end of this video to see that next one once it drops. But yeah, that's tier 1 of the Philosopher's Iceberg. Tier 2 is going to be coming out at some point soon. And yeah, if you guys like this video, I'd appreciate it if you subscribed and commented down below if you have any other philosopher stuff you would like me to tackle. But until then, see you guys on the next video. Peace out.